Hello everyone. This is your instructor. Hello everyone. Dr. Rachita Mishra. This is your instructor. Hello everyone. Dr. Rachita Mishra. This is your instructor. Hello everyone. Dr. Rachita Mishra. Speaking to you on the Agile principles and models. Speaking to you on the Agile principles and models. So today is the third class we are having, and we will be covering. Today is the third class we are having, and we will be covering. Today is the third class we are having, and we will be covering. Today is the third class we are having. 1 minute. And we will be covering. Today is the third class we are having. 1 minute. And we will be covering. Today is the third class we are having. 1 minute. And we will be covering. 1 minute. So today we will be covering the topics. So today we will be covering topics that is agile development, introduction, history, the manifesto, and about the agility, introduction, history, agile, the adaptive process models, and among it we will be looking into XP, Scrum, and Kanban. Adaptive process models, and among it we will be looking into XP, Scrum, and Kanban. So, what is agile? And what is this agile principles? Agile. And what is this agile principles? So, if we will see the introduction and history. So earlier, what used to happen is in the previous all the software developments we have seen the process models. So earlier, what used to happen is in the previous there was a lot of effort that was spent on the planning process models, and the requirement conversion was not very good. There was a lot of effort that was spent because planning and the requirement conversion was not very good. So so what happened is the requirement conversion was not very good because there were a lot of changes. So sorry for the interruption. There was some sound. So now we can continue properly. So that is what it means is poor requirement conversion, because there was a rapid changing environment when you do the software development. So the requirement that was converted into code was not in pace with the changing environment, and the staff were not considered as knowledgeable people, but more like workers who will give some productivity. And they were also called heavyweight because they had a lot of planning rigor, and there was a lot of focus on the documentation, heavy documentation. So around 2001, specifically in February 2001, 17 developers from different organizations met at a place in Utah to discuss the how to create lightweight development methods. So they wanted to reduce this planning and documentation. So when they did that, they had some discussions for some time, and they tried to create something known as a manifesto for agile software development. So these agile models that they used, from this manifesto, some software development models were created, which were called agile software development. And they all had the concept they were originated from the concept of incremental model, evolutionary models, and the prototyping, which we have studied in our previous classes over the prescriptive models. Now let's look at what is principles of Agile Manifesto. So there are 12 manifesto items which they gave, and these can be read like this. First of all, they said that there has to be rapid delivery of useful software. Instead of waiting for having a plan for a long period, you have short plans, small scope, and do a rapid delivery. So like a RAD method. So that's what is there from the RAD method. They took that. Welcome changing requirements, even late in the development. So earlier people don't like change requirements to come while doing the development. But in Agile, they said that we have to welcome the change because that is required by the customer. So even if it is late in the development, accept it. And when you say working software is delivered frequently, not only that it will be rapid, but also delivered frequently. That means every week or every month, you deliver something to the customer. So you develop small parts of the software, some small pieces of the software, and keep giving so that the customer will start using it every month. They will get new features. The working software is the principle of the measure of progress. So when they wanted to measure the progress, they will measure the progress in terms of the working software. And there has to be sustainable development. That means the pace in which you will provide the delivery has to be constant, so that people start getting something or other. And what they also said is that you need to have a face-to-face conversation with the customer. So they also said that you might like to have co-location. That means everybody is sitting in the same place, both the business and the developers, so that there will be good amount of communication as well as the cooperation. So cooperation was one of the features that was highlighted. And this cooperation, when we are telling, we are not telling about the team cooperation, but we are saying the business people and the developers. That means they work together. And the projects are built around motivated individuals who should be trusted. So instead of considering this staff as some people who provide some work, but we have to think of them as knowledgeable people who are actually building something, and they have to be motivated and they should be trusted. And continuous attention to technical excellence and good design is one of the focus. Simplicity is another important focus. When we say simplicity means the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, which is not essential, so you try not to do it. And only there should not be any effort spent in doing scalable software, in doing optimization, because in that case we will be spending a lot of unnecessary time. So that unnecessary time spending must be reduced. And the teams have to be self-organized teams, That means they should be capable of taking leadership, and the leadership will be distributed. Authority will be distributed. They will be self-organized. That means they will be cooperating within themselves and solving their own problems. They should be experts. They should be experienced people who will understand the problem and provide the proper solution by giving the proper leadership as and when it is required. And there has to be regular adaptation to changing circumstances. When we say regular adaptation to changing circumstances, it is not just the requirements change, but also planning, scope, and priority. So there are many things that the customer will want to change, and all these things we have to take into account when we say that there will be adaptation. So, and adaptations will not be once, but it will be regular. So, as and when we are giving the sustainable development in a constant space, in a constant speed, for each thing, we will be regularly also adapting to whatever is the changes that the customer needs. So in this context, in the context of this Agile manifesto, people try to define what is agility in software development. So we can view the agility like effective response to change, effective response to changes. That means whenever there is a change, as I told you, it could be anything could change. We have to respond in an effective manner. And there has to be effective communication and collaboration among all the stakeholders. When we say stakeholders, means both from the customer side and the business side. And we have to eliminate, we should not speak about team. Normally in the normal development methods, people tend to talk of us for the project team, the project organization, and them means the customer. Same, the business people, the customer people will think them to be us, and the project team as them. So this kind of attitude has to be removed. There should be proper collaboration, organized so that the team is in control of the work performed. So the organization has to be in such a way that the team is responsible, team is trustable, and team is taking full control of the performance of the work, whatever they are doing. Rapid incremental delivery of operational, when we said usable software, so operational software, that means something that the customer can use for doing their business. De-emphasizing importance to intermediate work products. So intermediate work products, that was so important in the previous lessons when we were studying the other types of SDLC, the processes, that is your iterative waterfall, your RAD, your prototyping, evolutionary increments, and there we've always talked of work products. So here the intermediate work products are internal to the customer, so that is not important, but the output, final output which goes to the customer is very important. And it recognizes need for flexible planning. So that is why we said adapting. So that is always flexible planning. Agility can be applied to any software process. Whatever is the model, you can convert it into agile method if you follow some of these principles, some of these manifesto principles that we need to have. And it has to be designed to allow the team to adapt tasks and streamline them. That means we have to modify our software process to all these things. That is, one is adapt tasks, streamline them, understand the fluidity in software while you are doing the planning. That means the changes, the workflow changes, and eliminate all except few essential work in a lean manner. So lean is a concept in quality management. So we will also deal with it later. When we say lean, that means we have to see that only essential work product is produced, not other things. So we should focus on that and emphasize short incremental delivery strategy, forgetting workable software to the customer in a very rapid way as early as possible. So once if you can take any software process and if you can apply all these agility characteristics, then it becomes a agile process or an agile software development model, or we can say it is a adaptive. That is why we say these agile methods are adaptive process models, because their main thing is adapting to the change in the customer environment. So that is why I gave this heading, agile or adaptive model. So when we say talk of a agile or adaptive process, what it should have, it should be adaptable to change. I'm emphasizing this. There is a lot of repetition in my slides. I'm doing because these things are very important. Adaptable to change, and how it adapts. If you do a continuous adaptation, then you cannot sustain the development. So normally what we do, we adapt incrementally, and also it requires customer feedback. So when it requires customer feedback, the adaptation criteria should be customer feedback. And this customer feedback should become an effective catalyst. And for that, you can create, so whatever you give in the increment, when you deliver in the increment, it is an operational software. So because it is an operational software, you can call it like an operational prototype. If when we did a prototyping, we said prototyping, the prototype that we you use is like a model software, which you can run and see the effect, but it is a throwaway. So now what we are talking is that we can view these incremental deliveries to the customer as if they are operational prototypes, and by using this operational prototype, customer will provide the feedback. So this each increment becomes a catalyst for providing us the customer feedback, which is very useful for adapting into the project. Now, agile software development has got certain values. So what are those values? Here we value the individuals and the interactions over processes and tools. Earlier what we said, that our process is very rigid. We have to follow it. We have to have a very rigorous process. And we said for supporting the quality of the process, we have to have tools. Well, these are used in the agile process, but more than this, lot of human values like individuals and interactions are more important. They have higher value than processes and tools. So we cannot say that because our process is like this and our tool supports this, so we will not do it. No, it is not like that. We have to give respect to the individuals, and we have to be interactive, and we have to be collaborative. Similarly, working software, we have to give value to working software rather than documentation, because in previous things we thought of the software life being very long, so we need to have a maintainability. So maintainability was a very important quality characteristics. So we said to make it maintainability, we need to have documentation. Now, after that, apart from the interactions and the working software, continuous collaboration is important rather than contract negotiation. Normally, in the other processes, we have seen that the contract negotiation is more important, not the customer collaboration. So here we give more emphasis value to the customer collaboration, and also instead of following a plan, we try to respond to the change. That means we value the change in the plan. We cannot say that plan is rigid. We have to say that change is more important than our plan. So we have to respond to change rather than adhere to a plan. In Agile software engineering also encourages certain practice. So these are some of the practice. So we have seen the minimum requirement for being agility. We have seen the development values. And now what we are seeing, some of the practices that is a part of the engineering, software engineering, Agile software engineering. Customer satisfaction by early incremental delivery. Small and highly motivated project team, informal methods with minimal software engineering work products, and overall development simplicity. So these are some of the things, 4 things that we have stated. Those are the practices that are very much used, they are encouraged in the Agile software engineering models. So let's look at Agile process models and adaptability. To address the problems of adapting to unpredictable and in requirement change, unpredictability in requirement change analysis and design. So what we have normally, this is the truth. This is what is the reality. In reality, in all projects, you will have some amount of unpredictability. That means you cannot predict when the requirement will change, it will come, how many number of times the requirement will change, and automatically it will provide unpredictability to the analysis and to the design, because many things will depend on the requirement. Also, there will be difficulty in planning. In such a fluid situation, when you have requirement changing many times during the project, what will happen? There will be difficulty in planning. So when you have the difficulty in planning, so these are the basic issues that appeared in our previous process models, which we are trying to address in this adaptability or in the agility of the new process model, agile process models. So what they do, how do they do it? In practice, what they do, they adapt, but they adapt in an incremental manner, not continuously. Because as I said, if you try to adapt continuously, then what will happen? The project will never be ending. No phase will end. Neither requirement change will end. And analysis will be half done. Again, you have to go. So there will be a continuous iteration between requirement change, analysis, design, and nothing will change. Nothing will be complete. So you will not be able to provide any sort of operational software to the customer. So the basic fundamental principle of adapting here is to create adaptations in incremental manner. That means you say that I don't change every day, but between 2 increments I will change. So I will keep all the changes, all the things that I will adapt it in the next increment. So in an incremental manner, you keep adapting. Adaptations will need customer feedback. Again, these adaptations will be based on the customer feedback. It is not just anything. It will not be originated by the project team or any stakeholder. Whatever is the customer says, it has to be properly intimated through the feedback. Hence, incremental development strategy is to be instituted where the customer feedback will come. After each increment, the customer feedback will come, and this will drive the adaptations for the next increment. Deliveries of increment to be done in short periods so that adaptations can keep pace with change, and iterative approach to enable customer to evaluate and give feedback. As you can see, some of these are related. Deliveries of increment to be done in short periods so that adaptations can keep pace with change, because we know that change will happen very rapidly. So if you give short deliveries, in short period, if you take small scope and give small increments, you create, and you give within a short time you give the delivery, then when you get the feedback and the changes, you can adapt it to the next increment faster. And because of the iterative approach, that will enable the customer to evaluate and give the feedback. And customer influences the adaptations. That is what we said. Adaptations needs customer feedback. So all the adaptations will be based on the customer's requirement, customer's business needs. So the adaptations will be influenced by him, and they will be accommodated through the feedback process into the next increment. So the changes, these adaptations will be in an incremental manner. So this is how the agile process actually practice the agility in to make it practical, these adaptations. And then there are some human factors in the agile process, because people are very much important. We said that the team has to be self-organized, respected, self-coordinated. So they have to take their own decisions. So that is why the members must display certain key traits. What are those key traits? What are those characteristics that the team members, the project team members will need to have? They will need to have competence in the software skill and the process knowledge. Both software skill as well as the process knowledge are important and considered to be competency. And they need to have a common focus. Although they will be doing different tasks and each one will have a target, but they will have a common goal. The focus will be same. All of them will be working towards a common goal. Collaboration is another thing. They must be collaborative, not only within themselves to be self-organized, also with the customer, to build software which provides value to business. So that is a very basic principle that the team members will have to respect. They are not free to do what they want. They will always have to be customer oriented, and when they are customer oriented, they have to give value to the business. Decision making ability they should have. They should have autonomy and to take decisions regarding technical activities as well as project issues. They should have mutual trust and respect, and they should be self-organized. That means team organizes itself for the work to be done. Team organizes the process to accommodate to environment in the best way. They organize the work schedule to the best to achieve the delivery requirements. Now let's look at the agile process. So now we have developed, discussed what is agility, how it follows the agile principles, which is part of the manifesto, which was given in the year 2001, and how they actually practice it. We have seen the values, we have seen what are the talent and skill of the people, the characteristics that they must display. Now there are many method models. These are only few of them that I have written down, and that is why I have given ... in the end. And different people, they follow different models. And here today we will be discussing extreme programming, which is in short called XP. We will be discussing Scrum, and we'll also look into Kanban, which is a lean method of developing in Agile model. So we'll look into it one by one because we have limited time, and these are the three most important ones that are normally taken up. And when you go to the industry and you follow the Agile models, you will be mostly finding such kind of processes. And if you find some other, you can easily accommodate it. So what is extreme programming? In short, XP. So this started in 2004. It was originally suggested in 1999 when when people started thinking of agility, and finally 2001 the Agile manifesto came out, and it was put into practice after 2004. It has 4 core values, and these core values are actually common sense principles, but taken to the extreme level. That is why we call it extreme programming. That means you take very simple things and you stretch it to the extreme level and you say, this is what is my most important thing. So those are the four. The first one is communication and feedback. The second one is simplicity. The third one is responsibility. And the fourth one is courage. So when you say communication and feedback, it encourages this extreme programming. It encourages face-to-face communication rather than documentation. In the previous prescriptive models, the incremental model, the iterative models, and the evolutionary models, we were stressing on the documentation. Documentation was considered to be a means of communication. Formal written communication was made through formal documentation. Whereas in this XP, they said that this is not very important, this is very time consuming, so better to have face-to-face communication. Frequent small working increments help improve communication and feedback. So you communicate for a short, very directly, immediately build and get the feedback. So that in the feedback time also you are having communication with the customer, and also at the beginning you are having communication with the customer to plan your increment. Then simplicity is another value, core value. So design is kept simple to the current requirement. Whatever is the small little bit of scope we have taken, we are only designing for that. In the prescriptive models and in the other models, we used to design even for the future. It is considered that the software will live, so it will have change, it will be scaling. So therefore, we have to design for the future also, not only current. But here we say, not only the complete projection, but just the increment scope you have to take. And you have to design only for that much. And you should not think of extensibility, that is the future need. And the responsibility is another core value. That means the quality, that means the developer is completely responsible for the technical excellence. The customer will expect that each developer is a very talented and skilled person who is aware of what is the software product quality. He has good knowledge about product quality. He has good knowledge about process, and they will do a proper quality work. So technical excellence is one of the major focus, and the developer is completely responsible for it. So when you have in the team, you will have developers, testers, and quality group. They will be working together to see that the quality is maintained. And courage, they must have a lot of courage, because new ideas will have to be tried out, and you have to have the courage to throw it and again try new fresh design. So many times the design is if it fails, then you have to throw it and do again. So you will gain the experience from it and do better and better. So these are the four core principles which are taken to the extreme values, becoming the main part of the XP model. So this has got, as you can see, it is very simple. It has only four activities: planning, designing, coding, and testing. And most of the time, they prefer to have the object-oriented approach, because object-oriented approach is very easy to scale up, and you can do less design, and it is also easy to redesign. That is another one of the major things, and it is also easy to reuse. So that is why, because we have to have very fast delivery. So this reusable, because object-oriented, we can do a lot of reusable components very fast. So that is why object-oriented approach is the main preferred development paradigm. And there are only four framework activities. So we'll look at it. We'll very soon go through it. What is planning? The requirement is given in terms of user stories. So what happens is the customer starts giving user stories, and they are indexed. That means they are numbered, and they are placed like index cards, like sometimes like the library card you have, your books are indexed like that. So you index the stories, you give numbers to them, and you index it and you keep it. So there is a deck of user stories, and the customer assigns a value or a priority to each of these user story. And after that, what will happen? The project team will evaluate it and they will give a cost. So for every user story, you will have a priority or a value, a business value or a business priority, and a cost. That means how much effort, how much cost will be required to develop it. A deliverable increment will be created by combining related stories. So you take a set of related stories which have the proper priority. Based on the priority, you plan the increment. So you create the deliverable increment by combining them, and then based on the priority, on the value, business value, you plan it. And once it is planned, you give a commitment on the delivery date. So you say this was my first increment, then this is this date we will be delivering it. After the first increment, what will happen? The project velocity, that means the rate at which the work was done, will be computed. Now this rate, productivity rate, when normally called as the velocity, this is a very important terminology in agile methods. We will know, the project team will know how to develop, how much time will be required for the next increment, because the next increment scope will be taken based on the prioritization again, and based on the rate that they have achieved here, they will give the delivery date for the next. So as you can see, you have small increments, small plan, little estimates, and little design. And the design will follow OO methodology, not the conventional one, and keep it simple will be the basic principle. There is CRC, we will read it in our design class. Class responsibility collaborator is a method by which people will identify the objects, classes, and sometimes if it is a very complex situation, then they will do some design models or design prototypes. And these are sometimes called as a spike solution, like a prototype. Like in earlier we called prototyping method in the evolutionary methods. In this XP, they call it spike solution. So you must remember this term, spike solution. Refactoring is another term that is very common to agility and especially to the XP. Why you have to do refactoring? Because you are doing very simple design and you are doing it very rapidly. So what happens when the next subsequent increments come, then sometimes you have to break the design of the previous increments what you have delivered. So because you want to simplify, so when you start doing many increments, they become very complicated. They become too much spaghetti like. So you want to simplify it. So you break the design without breaking the business logic. You break the design, basic design of your classes and the relation, and you refactor it. Refactor, that is why it is called refactoring. That means you are decomposing it. So we will understand what is factoring and decomposing when we go to the design classes. Therefore, design occurs both before and after coding. So even after you have coded some and you have already delivered, even then you may design the previous increments. You may have to redesign the previous increment because you want to simplify it. And then the coding is very simple. You create the unit. You first create the unit test cases. You don't start the programming, but you start based on the each story in that increment, user story. You create the test cases, and based on the test case, you have to do the coding. And because it is a small team, you have a concept of pair programming. This is a very important concept in XP. You must remember this. When you say pair programming, what will happen? Solving the problem, that means coding it, as well as the quality assurance will be done simultaneously, many times by a pair or a set of developers. A very small set of 2 or 3 developers. One of them will be solving the problem, the other will be doing QA. And when the second one is doing the problem solving, the first one will be doing the QA. So alternately, they will take these roles and they will work together to complete the testing as well as the coding. And normally the source modules will be in a smoke testing environment. Why it will be smoke testing? Because when we are adding the increments, what will happen is some of the previous increments, there will be some critical task. Those critical tasks may get disturbed by providing a new one, because we are doing it so rapidly, and we are looking at focused on the increment only. Sometimes we will lose focus on the what we have done previously. So some critical functionality may get affected. So that is why we will do a smoke test. Smoke test is something that you do kind of a regression testing, where you are also testing not only the current increment but also some of the critical part of the already delivered systems. Smoke test checks that subsequent builds are stable with respect to critical functions. And then after that you will have a more rigorous testing, where you will have a regression testing, you will have integration testing, validation testing, and also the user acceptance testing. These things we have discussed in the previous model, so they are same. Only thing is it is part of the process. So now we are coming to the end of the XP. So we'll look at the, so as you can see, it is very good to implement and very customer friendly, but it has some practical limitations. The first one is the face-to-face communication, because we have to co-locate the customer team as well as the project team. And normally, because we do it over different nations, different places, this is a major hurdle in the implementation of the XP. Also, dividing the system function into relatively small iterations, because we are talking of very small iterations, very small increments. And each increment must have self-contained components which will be usable. So that is sometimes very difficult to do in a system function, to divide it in that way. And sometimes iterations will not contain any user interface. If the user interface is not there, then the user will not be able to provide us a feedback. So sometimes we will have to do iterations which are functionality, backend functionality, or some design functionality, but it will be like an internal work product. But so there will be no feedback. So it's because these things are very important. That is why these are some of the limitations. Sometimes we may not be able to do so. Only when we are able to do co-location and able to solve these things, we will go for limitations. Similarly, if you have by doing, we may have to do a lot of refactoring. When we do a lot of refactoring, some system may become unstable, may become unreliable, and it may not be extendable. Similarly, we may not be getting enough of experienced developers. Also, when experienced developers leave the system, the team, there is a high risk, and the project knowledge is lost, and comprehensive repository of test cases to do smoke test, integration test, regression test, that may be very difficult, and they will also need some documentation, whereas documentation is not part of the XP. So whereas it is required to have repository of test cases, if you don't have a proper documentation, using it will be very difficult. And also the code reuse. So whatever is possible code reuse within that object oriented, that only we can use. But it is not encouraged, because we will be losing a lot of in the design itself. If you try to design for code reuse, that is not encouraged in XP model. So that is why this is not feasible. So like conventional development, we cannot do this code reuse. So that is one thing we have to look into it. Now we come to the next one, which is called the Scrum. This is another lightweight agile method and is used for managing and controlling software and product development in rapidly changing environments. So as you know, this is one of the basic principles of having agile models. The major characteristic of the scrums are here. Just like we have described the characteristics of XP, now we will be describing the characteristics of the scrum. If you remember, one of the major characteristics of XP was high quality and rapid development. So the rapid development is also same here, incremental process, iterative. Increments are here called sprints. and it is a team-based approach. There we had pair programming, here we have team-based approach. And developing systems products with rapidly changing requirements. So here also we take in the rapidly changing to it, we adapt to it. But there is one more thing, there is a lot of control on the chaos of conflicting interest and needs. So management control is one of the major characteristics of the Scrum. Improve the communication and maximize cooperation. So this is another management aspect that is part of the characteristic. Protecting the team from disruption and impediments. So there we had self-organizing team, but here we have somebody who is like a manager who is protecting the team, who is trying to solve the problems and see that there is no disruptions. A way to maximize the productivity. So there we were not talking of productivity maximization, we were talking of quality and experimentation, but here we are talking of maximizing the productivity, removing all problems by a managing person. So when XP focuses on quality of delivered software, Scrum focuses on project management issues of the deliveries. So this is more of project management. So that's why I was telling you all these things are kind of project management activities. What is there in Scrum? There are 3 components which are characteristics to the Scrum team. There are certain roles and there are certain processes and there are certain artifacts. The roles are three roles: Scrum Master, Scrum Team and Product Owner. And the Scrum process has all these kind of things. We will go into it one by one. And then in the Scrum artifacts, we have some backlogs and we have some burn down charts. So there are different types of burn down charts and there are different type of backlogs. So we'll see what is backlog and what is burn down charts, and we will also look into the process and the roles. So let's first go to the roles. In the roles we have Scrum Master, we have Scrum Team and Product Owner. In the Scrum Master, he represents the management to the project. So because we said there will be somebody acting like a project manager, and so he is the team leader or the project manager, whatever you call. But he is representing the management for the project. He is responsible for ensuring Scrum values and practices and also to remove the difficulties and facilitate team function. Then there is a Scrum team, that is basically the technical team, which is cross-functional. That means you will have not only developers, but you will have QA, you will have designers, and all kinds of different talents will have to be mixed. Typically 5 to 10, not 2 or 3, but 5 to 10, not 2 or 3 like XP, but it will 5 to 10. All are full-time working in the Scrum team. Again, they will be self-organizing. That means they will be experienced people who will have authority on all kinds of technical decisions. Team membership can change only between sprints. So within here the increment is called a sprint. So each increment is called a sprint. So within that sprint, once it is planned and started, the leadership will not change, the membership will not change. But once the sprint is over, some new members may come and some new leaders may come in. Then there is a third one, that is the product owner. He is like the representative of the customer or the business people. And he acts like one voice in all circumstances. So he is the decision maker. The project Scrum Master is the manager to provide all the facilities and remove the difficulties. He is the one who decides what will be done and when it will be done, what will be the priority. Knows what needs to be built and the best sequence, typically a product manager from customer organization. Then we come to the process. In the process, we will have the project kickoff meeting, a special form of sprint planning meeting. So basically the sprint planning meeting is the major important one, where you will have 2 parts to it. One will be with the customer, product owner, Scrum Master and Scrum team. So what they will do, they will create the product backlog. Product backlog is a list of items In the XP we talked of user stories. So here we are talking of product backlog. So product backlog is basically the items that will be developed, and they will also determine the each sprint, the goal of each sprint. And the participants in the second part, the participants will be Scrum Master and the Scrum team. They will not involve the product owner anymore, and they will create the sprint backlog. So based on the product backlog, they will be creating. So here the goal will be created, and the product backlog will be created. That means the like a complete scope of the product. But here the particular sprint, what will be taken into that particular sprint, that will be selected from the product backlog, and the sprint backlog will be created. So this is the list of items that will go into the development of the sprint. Then this will be a project kickoff meeting, and then the actual sprint comes. That sprint is always time boxed. That means the time, once it is decided, is not changed. It is very rigid. A month, normally it is a month long iteration. If you remember, in RAD method we said it will be 2 to 3 months. Here it is normally a month. That means every month there will be some delivery, and the team is full-time committed if some item is not complete. So what will happen after a month? If some item is not complete, then it is taken to the next sprint, and it is the release time is the end time, or the release time is not disturbed. Then you have the daily Scrum meeting. Daily Scrum meeting is basically a small daily meeting, day meeting, first thing in the beginning of the task. This is to discuss the work that is completed within that backlog list, and what is the current work that will have to be taken up, what are the difficulties, how to solve it. And the team members will make commitments regarding the work to the team members and also to the Scrum Master. And it will happen in a collaborative way. The progress will be tracked by the team as well as the Scrum Master. So that is the objective of this daily Scrum meeting. Then at the end of it, you will have a sprint review meeting, which is held at the end of the sprint. And they will be checking. This will be done by the product owner or the business functionality to review the sprint and provide the feedback. Now we come to the artifacts. The artifacts are product backlog. That is what we discussed. The product backlog is a list of prioritized requirements or the user stories, the items that will be entered into it. It is managed and owned by the product owner. Product owner is the manager for it. You will create a spreadsheet, and from this, sprints will be created during the sprint planning, reprioritized before each planning meeting. So as and when requirements are taken to the sprint, and the next one again it is reprioritized. Then once it is created, we said that some estimate has to be made because it has to be planned. So just like in XP, the velocity will be discussed, will be calculated based on the team's velocity. The work that is taken for the sprint will be decided, and it will be time boxed. So that means it will be scheduled, and so they will see how much they can handle from the amount of work, and the unit of complexity, size, category, number of story points, all these things will be taken into account while determining the forecast or the sprint plan. And method of effort estimation will be basically by using a work breakdown structure. When we go to these classes, we will see what is the effort estimation. And then next you have the sprint backlog. Again, this is a forecast. So like the product backlog, you have the sprint backlog. It defines the work for a sprint, and it is always a subset. of this backlog. So you will have maximum 300 tasks you will take, and each task should be 16 hours. So that means this is basically breakdown of the complete scope of the sprint into smaller tasks. This is where we are using our process. We had said that in the process there will be activities, and each activity will be defined into work sets or tasks. So these are those smaller unit of tasks that the engineers will take up to develop and test and provide the integration and deliver. Now each item has its own status which is updated on a daily basis. So sprint backlog will maintain the not only the plan of all the tasks but also the status where it is. And then you have the burn down charts. So in the burn down charts basically provides you how you are doing it. Whether you are going fast, whether you are going slow, how much cost you are expending, how much more time will be required. So those are the things that is the objective of the burn down charts. That means how much more you will burn, how much is burned, that means how much cost is already expended and how much more is required. So it will give the progress. So sprint burn down charts, we have the progress of the sprint. Release burn down charts, we have the release of the delivery, how the release is being done to the customer. So another thing that we have to remember is that each sprint may not be released. It is possible that multiple sprints will go to a single release to the customer, but they may be done in a sprint manner, in a time box manner. Then you have the product burn down chart, which is the complete progress of the product. So in the burn down charts, you will have measures remaining effort in the y-axis. In the y-axis, you will have remaining effort, and in the x-axis, what you will have? You will have the days for each item. So the days in which you have planned that particular sprint, that number of days will be here, and the remaining effort for each day you have planned. So what is the remaining will be there. So that is why I was telling you, it will show you how much more you have to work. Shows the estimated amount of time to release. Ideally, when the sprint is over, it will completely burn down to zero. That means in the x-axis, for all the days, the y-axis will become zero. That means you have completely exhausted all the work. Then the release, similarly, you will have a release and product burnout charts. They are at a higher level, so they give you a big picture view. Here in this, the x-axis instead of days will show the sprints. And for each sprint, you will give the remaining hours. So when you have multiple sprints, you can see how the previous sprints have gone. You will see how the future sprints, and you will also have the current sprint. So in the general, it will depict how the product is going and how the release is going. Now we will look into some other things, that is called how you can mix Scrum and XP. So there are two things. One is Scrum and XP together, and the other is Scrum of Scrums. So Scrum of Scrums are also called as Meta-Scrum. It is a concept to scale the Scrum, and with multiple Scrum teams, each team having 6 to 10, and the frequency of meeting between Scrum team depends on the degree of coupling between the release of packets. So you can have, like we had in RAD method, you can have parallel Scrum teams working so that you can even make the product faster. So that is called Scrum of Scrums. And then you can have Scrum of XP. That means XP will be your actual agile development practice, but over it you will have a wrapper, that is the Scrum, which will be an effective project management wrapper. So it will enable agile project to become scalable, and because of the project management you are giving, enables development by distributed teams of developers instead of co-location. So these are the advantages of having a Scrum and XP together and putting it in as a Scrum of Scrum. So you can have multiple XP teams within a Scrum of Scrum model. In the framework of Scrum of Scrums, you are putting multiple XP. So this I will not spend much time. We have already discussed. You can go through this. I will come to the third one, which is Kanban method and Agile software development. So what is Kanban? So there was somebody called Tai Chi who's in inventory, who was in the Toyota industry, who said just-in-time inventory management, and he started something called as the lean approach, which is called Kanban. Kanban stands for the Japanese for signboard or billboard. And by the way, Scrum is normally taken from the rugby football that Americans play, and similarly Kanban is taken from the Japanese word for signboard or billboard. It improves work by balancing demands and available capacity. So it always looks into the capacity, and based on that it will allow work, and it tries to remove all bottlenecks. So that is why we call it lean. That means we'll see lean approach. Kanban provides a view of work progress by visualization. So visualizing work items and visualizing work progress is a major characteristics of the Kanban method, and that is given by the Kanban board. So this is the billboard that we are talking of. Conventionally, work is pushed to a system as per request. So that is normally the kind of plan we do. We said the customer needs so many things, so therefore we have to plan for it. So we push some work or tasks into our system or into our plan. But here what is done, work is pulled as capacity permits. So what has happened, capacity is created by completing work. So no time there will be any work in progress. So the work in progress must be very low. The work has to be completed. Completing the work and creating the capacity is the major focus here. And whenever the capacity is created, there is a pool of work, so you pull it. So there is a repository of work. From there you pull the work into your system and then you work on it. So Kanban is not a management framework such as Scrum. The purpose of Kanban is to continually improve one's work process. So it has a quality focus and a lean focus. So both quality as well as lean. It is used in a way to implement both lean and agile principle. Lean demands zero or low WIP. So that means that is what it says. The work in progress should be very low. That is why it is called lean. That means thin. It should be very thin. Agile demands adaptability. So you need both adaptability as well as low WIP. What are its more core practices? You must visualize your work. That is one thing. And also you must put a limit on your progress. So these are the two things that are very much applied to the software development. Then there are some 4 general principles. That is, make policies explicit, manage the flow, don't keep any bottlenecks. Here have a smooth flow of work, implement feedback loops in your workflow, and improve collaboratively by improving your technology, your process, and evolve experimentally. So experimentation and collaboration to improve your process and your final quality is one of the general practice. So what is visualize the flow of work? Using the Kanban board, one can visualize the process steps, and Kanban board can be very simple to very elaborate. It will have swim lanes. The swim lanes are rows, each one for a class of service. So if for one class of service, you will take one swim lane. Swim lanes are rows crossing several columns used for grouping user stories by feature. So you take one set of user stories and say this is one of my swim lanes. This is the set of work that will be given, and it will go through different stages until it is out of the swim lane, or that means it is completed. And all these swim lanes will be visualized. It will be always visible as a billboard, as the Kanban board. The aim is to make the general workflow and the progress of the individual items clear to participants and stakeholders. The workflow is visualized. Visualize the current work and the team members are doing. So let's take an example. So if you see in this example, these are the epics like stories. You said user stories. So here they call it pool of ideas. So these ideas are given names. They are indexed. So there is a epic number 431, there's a epic number 478, like that. Then you pull some of these into the row, and these will tell you the limits of the work WIP. That means you can at best have, in this feature preparation phase, you can at best have 3 to 10 epics. Similarly, in the feature subject selected, you can have 2 to 5. So you can have less than 5, but at maximum you can have 5. So there is a limit. There is this is called as the WIP limit. And similarly, you have everything. You have user stories identified, users preparation, user development, acceptance feature, deployment, deliver. So these are the process steps, the activities in the columns. You can have different one. This is just an illustration. And what is in the row? Row is a set of features that is being taken up. You can call it as an increment. So this one, when it is complete, it will be delivered. Similarly, another set of epics will be taken and it will be delivered. And the idea is that at any point of time, there will be, because so many epics are being taken parallelly, there will be very less amount of WIP here. Why? Because the capacity of the team is limited. The number of team members is limited. So that is why. And for each one, you can put some policies. So limit on the work WIP, limiting work in progress, fundamental to the implementing. It is called a pull system. So team is encouraged to complete the work and create capacity so that the WIP will be over, it will become 0 and more work can be taken to start. It also communicates to the customer that the capacity is limited. The team numbers are limited, so we cannot. So the customer will have to prioritize which one they want first and which one they want later, which they can keep it for the later work. WIP limits are put. And for example, I was showing you the deployment, it has only 5. So the moment it reaches 5, there is an urgency to push it out, to complete it and push it out. No more work items can move into deployment until they are all moved out to the delivered. So if you want, you can put more staff into that and try to move it out. So that is how the visualization techniques helps in creating the balance in the work. Manage the flow, so it helps to manage the flow, resolving, eliminating bottlenecks, remove intermediate wait stages, and reducing time spent in these wait stages is key to reducing cycles. So there should not be any waiting. People should not wait, or work should not wait. It should work like water moving in a pipe. It should move very smoothly. The work will be moving very smoothly. As the problems immediately gets noticed because of the visualization technique, so people can move team members from one place to another place. They can do a lot of replanning and rescheduling and resourcing. A big success of implementing a Kanban system is it improves the ability to forecast completion time reliably. Whereas because of the visualization, we can reliably say that when what will be completed. So there is a lot of transparency to the customer as well as to the team members. Then you can have policies explicitly. You can attach policies at the board level, highest level. You can attach policies at the swimlane level, row, or also at the column level. We have seen some column level in that particular example. So I have given some examples here. Feature selection will be finalized by product director at a specified meeting. That is a policy level decision which is attached, and it is not separately kept. It is kept as part of the Kanban board. So everybody can see what is the policy and it will be explicit to them. They act like process guides at a lower level. At a higher level, they are policies. At a lower level, they can work as process guides or even checklist steps. So that is how it helps the team members in knowing the guidelines and the checklists. You can also explicitly mention what is the entry and exit criteria. When you will say that a particular work on a particular column or a particular step or an activity or a task is complete, what is the exit criteria, and what are the criteria on which you can start the work. Then it implements feedback loops. You can have review stages in your Kanban board workflow, and you can also add metrics and reports and a range of visual cues that will provide you continuous feedback on the work progress. So not only that you can attach metrics and reports, and you can have milestones for the reviews, you can have some activities for the reviews, is also the visual nature itself will give you the feedback. The feedback loops are critical for ensuring the right product or service to the customer in the shortest possible time. Then improve collaboratively, use experimental methods, that is another key. So using the metrics and the data, you can determine the performance and you can improve it, that is one way, or you can experiment, create some solutions and throw it and do it again. So how does Kanban help software development? It can have early decisions on changes, and you can limit by limiting the work in progress. You can remove the obstacles to the work, make the flow smooth. So by using the Kanban and the lean principles, you can actually make the software development very smooth and very effective, very efficient. And it helps to manage the workflow, metrics and report, discover patterns. This is very important. Helps discover patterns limiting the productivity. So all the things that we read in the non-adaptive methods, we are actually able to do it here. All those quantitative methods, as well as the visual method, and also discovering patterns, doing the experiments, doing a new method of solving problems. Everything is being done in the whatever is the ideal thing in software development is part of the Kanban. That is how Kanban is accepted into the software development cycle. And also it supports problem solving, risk management that I just discussed, creating some new suggestions for improvement and experimentation, and promotes collaboration and experimentation, takes the feedback which will provide scope for new way of working, creating prototypes or models as experiment solutions, and also it supports the Scrum methods of meetings, daily stand-up meetings and other meetings, giving quick overview on tasks and things like that. So it has a lot of characteristics which are common to the Agile methods. That is how Kanban, although it has a origin into the core industry, is very much accepted by the software industry. In summary, both Extreme and Scrum are use incremental development delivery. XP focuses on quality using the pair programming and refactoring for design development. Scrum uses time-boxed sprints for incremental delivery, and it enables Agile project to become scalable. Enables development of distributed teams instead of co-location. So these are some of the differences we had seen. Scrum can be effective project management wrapper. Projects can also use the concept of Scrum of Scrum, each Scrum project implemented as a XP. In Kanban is another method which is a quality-based lean management method originated in the quality management, total quality management, reducing WIP and creating a lean WIP and pulling the work by creating capacity. Uses Kanban board, and it is very suitable to the process of DevOps, product development and IT services. DevOps, I don't know whether any of you have heard of DevOps. It is a new way of working where you have the development team and the operation team working as a single team, working towards the fast delivery of and release of the increments to the customer. So always there will be a series of releases which will be worked together by the DevOps team. So that is a new concept that is coming in the development, software development arena. Then you have product development and IT services. Also you can use the Kanban to make it Lean and as well as Agile. Software development projects can be implemented with Agile, incremental. When Scrum of Scrum is used, then Kanban will help in streamlining and managing the process work item flow within the multiple Scrum teams. So what basically we are telling is that although these three are different concepts, you can combine them and take the advantage of each one of them. Now we come to a very important slide, which is exams and interviews. Normally people, we know that all of you students will go to the software industry, and before that you have to subject yourself to interviews. So there are many different types of questions that you will be asked. So now since I'm coming to the end of the software process in this online classes, so what are the type of questions you can be asked? You can be asked questions on the characteristics of the process models. What is the focus of each process model? That is something you have to remember. What are the benefits and the advantages? Questions can be from this. What is the suitability of the process model? So you have to see what is given a project, you have to how the project characteristics is that, and based on the project characteristics you have to which process model is suitable. Then you will have situational questions. That means some project characteristic or situation is given, a story kind of thing is built around, and based on that situation you have to make a decision. So you have from the situation you have to study the project characteristics, and based on that you have to say that this model is good. So that is another kind of question that may come in the time of interview or even in your exam. Then difference between types of models, different how do they differ? How does iterative model differ from the evolutionary model? How does a spiral model differ from the RAD model or the prototyping model? Things like that. Process model steps and activities. If you have a long question, then you may be asked. And also the process architecture diagram. Please remember the process architecture diagram, because architecture diagrams speak about the steps. So if you remember the diagrams, you will remember it well. Work products and any other artifacts, those can be also part of the question. Model versus the team organization. So every model has a particular time of team organization. So that is something you may focus on. Also the size of the project. So if the size is large, then this kind of model you choose. If the size is low, then you use. We had said that the incremental is very good for small size projects, small size teams. Agility and agile principles. So here we are talking of the team size, not the project size. Team organization and team size. Agility and agile principles. Then why agile or adaptive? Why we should use the agile? What is the, because we have to see what is the reality. So the reality demands adaptive models. So that is something you have to remember. And there is a lot of terms that we have taken: user stories, epics, time boxed, phase containment of error, SDLC, DevOps, sprint, refactoring. So these are the things that has come up in different discussions that you may like to remember. And you can go through the MCQ that I have given to Ekeeda. I'm hoping that they must have already shared it with you. If not, they will share it very shortly. So thank you all for your patient hearing.